All the Nuggets had to do was beat the San Antonio Spurs to secure a playoff spot. Fortune smiled upon them, and so the Nuggets spat in Fortune's face. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, which is the best way for you to join the show, to get in on the conversation after a pretty miserable Nuggets loss to the San Antonio Spurs. We'll break it down. I want to play a game of Is Hindsight Fair? And then the last segment, we'll go over the Western Conference playoff race. Adam Mares joins me from the DNVR bar. His Twitter handle is at Adam_Mares. Boy. I guess I'll start here. There's nothing unfamiliar about this. Like Nuggets fans know
That's the worst part of this.
Like we know the deal, right? Like if you told me the Nuggets lost to the Spurs on Tuesday night, and I will say like I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked at all. Like the Spurs were in a similar position to the Nuggets, where if they won, they secure their best playoff position that they can get. And the Nuggets have played terrible defense lately. This was a letdown spot after they show up for the game versus the Lakers, at least in the second half. And then the shots don't fall tonight. There's all these things I can do for excuses, but the reality is like this team should be better than it is, and it's not. And I don't know if that's the roster or if that's the performance by the players or whatever, but it doesn't really change the fact like Denver's not good enough. Denver's just not good enough. If they show me that they're good enough in the playoffs, I will say they showed us they were good enough to playoffs. But as of right now, this is not a good team. It's not well constructed. They don't play well. I don't think that they have been well coached in terms of their, like, the message isn't getting through on KYP and motivation. They're not prepared to play. They go down early in these games. I have a million complaints. And at the end of it, Malone was pretty tame. Like he wasn't like, that is inexcusable. Like he was just like, his whole thing was, it felt to him very much like we just didn't have it. That was like a quote from him. It's like, we didn't have it. Like, I think for him, he's just like, I don't think I can ask for any more from these guys. They are what they are. We are at the point in the season that we're at in the season.
I mean, I think to me, this is the part that is both scary, but also maybe a little hopeful, is that I think what's going on with the Nuggets, and somebody asked this, sort of phrased this, as a question here, but I think the problem with the Nuggets is that they're too tired to defend, and they're not good enough. Like the players, Marquise Morris is a good player, but Will Barton's a good player. These guys can do some things. I just think they can't do the level that they've been requested to this year consistently. And so you get nights like tonight where they're just all bad and can't make shots and can't get to the rim and this or that. But the thing is, they could win if they can just defend. And I think that this team just doesn't have the energy to defend. Like those guys are not naturally good defenders. So they need sort of like full energy and effort to defend.
Yeah,
and they don't have that.
Like Mikal Bridges and Marcus Smart can be tired, and their defense is still like 3 leagues above what Denver's perimeter defense is doing right now. Yeah. I'll say this, like, I want to ask you, Jokic had a monster stat line. He had a monster stat line. We've talked before, and he's had quieter games in terms of the stats, and you and I have said, like, this is one of the best games I've ever seen him play, and he's had monster games in the past, and we've been like, I don't think he played all that well. I want to defer to you. How do you think he played tonight?
I mean, he had a really bad fourth quarter. I mean, there's no question about that. Everything was short. He was tired. Defensively, all game, I thought he was also not great. He had a couple where he just gave up deep post position.
Yep.
But are you kidding? I thought he was incredible quarters 1, 2, and 3. Like in the first quarter, he missed 2 or 3 shots that I was a little surprised that he missed. But he was so aggressive in this game. Like all 3 quarters, honestly, 1, 2, and 3, he just was going right at those guys as if he knew they couldn't guard him, and they couldn't. So I actually thought he was really good on the offensive end in those first 3 quarters and completely ran out of gas. And then defensively, he wasn't great, but he wasn't the one standing out defensively to me. Like he had a couple plays where I'm like, ooh, yo, come on, man. Like you can make that one. But
yeah, he got beat. Like, here's the thing. If I critique him, it's because he's graded against a curve, right? And it's like, if you're like, well, who do you blame for the loss? I'm not going to list Nikola Jokic who had 41 points. Like, I'm not going to do that, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and go like, well, the reason they lost was Nikola Jokic. That's not true. That's not true at all. Like, did he give up? I thought he was tough on the defensive glass tonight. Like, there were Collins putbacks over him that weren't because he was rotating. It was just like he got beat a couple times, and that's fine. That's okay, right? Because Malone said as much after the game. Malone, and this was a rare moment of him that he tried to cover up for. He said he looked at him at the 9-minute mark and called for him, and Jokic looked at him like, really? And he was like, not that he was complaining, because Jokic never complained. Like, he quickly covered that, like, very quickly.
I think Jokic was tired, though, even in the second quarter, and then in the third quarter, he wasn't exhausted. In the fourth quarter, to me, he looked like really tired. I mean, we've been asking for him to play more minutes. And and like tonight he did. Obviously 40 minutes is a lot, or 41, whatever it was. But to me, what it was that second quarter stint from the bench. Like he plays the whole first. He's on fire and he's being aggressive. So I think Malone's like, I'm just going to ride this, and then I'll buy him extra minutes in the second quarter. But then the bench came in and was so bad that Malone's like, we can't do this. Right back in there. And to me, that's where it was kind of a killer. And I don't blame Malone. I would have done the same thing. I was screaming, like, just put Yoke back in. Stop the bleeding. Yeah. But it turned out that there was a cost to that, and you needed the bench to step up in the second half.
The whole thing, like, there are not good options. Like, a good option would have been like, go to your third center, which they don't have, which we'll talk about later in the show. I want to address this real quick from Zamora, who always has really good questions and comments. Why do you think tired is a problem for Denver and not as much for other teams?
Yeah, come on now.
The first thing I want to say is it's not. Like, I'm sorry. You're professionals. You get paid tens of $millions a year. This is the game you got to get up for. I give these guys a pass.
They were not up for it. Like, being tired is not an excuse. It's like sort of what the challenge was, but they were not up for the challenge.
And they were not up for the challenge. That's the thing. Is like I could, if you want to know like why were they not better, it's because of this. Is that an excuse? No. Like right. You got to dig down. I don't care if you don't dig down in early March. I don't care if you don't dig down in January. I don't care if you don't dig down in December. But you had a chance tonight to secure a playoff spot at home. You have to find it. Like, you got to. I don't have any, like, everybody is tired. Everybody's banged up. I'm sympathetic to you being tired. The difference here, honestly, was more is like, if you want to know what the difference is between the Nuggets and other teams, it's that way back in November after the MPJ injury, when I was like, this is going to cost them later.
Yeah.
Like, their bench was an unmitigated disaster, so they had to limit bench minutes. MPJ gets hurt, so they immediately, at a position that they're not necessarily deep at, everybody moves into more minutes in that rotation. And now you have this slow degradation. You can't be like, you know what, we're going to skate by with Bones Highland and our intended backup point guard Facu Campazzo for these minutes, because like that's not where they're at in the season, right? So like Monte plays more minutes, and then Monte gets tired, and Monte's been terrible the last 2 games, like on both ends of the floor. So there's this cumulative impact. If you say like, again, if you ask me, well, yeah, but shouldn't they suck it up? Yes, they should still find a way to do it. It sucks. I'm sympathetic to it, but the situation is what the situation is, and you did not meet the challenge.
I'll also say this. I think the Nuggets are in the thing that worries me about the Nuggets is I think they're in a tight spot with regards to belief. Like, I just wonder what this team believes, because there's a thing where it's like, we believe, so this adversity, like we can just run that extra hill, climb that extra mile. And they seem to me like a team that doesn't believe.
No. I want to push back on you in one specific way. I don't think you're wrong. I think you're right that they don't believe. But the difference is that I think that you're considering it a binary state, and that's not, in that it's not like they're like, man, we're just not good enough. I genuinely, Adam, being around like in the arena, I don't think that's where they are. I think they're genuinely like, I don't know. They don't know.
The uncertainty is the part that kills. Like, we've said this a lot. Our belief is the reason the Nuggets haven't provided a ton of updates is because they also don't know. And if they don't know, maybe the team doesn't know. And if the team doesn't know, it's hard to know like where you are. And I just think that's part of what this whole season has been, is like nobody really knows, like, are we going for it? Are we back? Are we doing this? Or Are we just marching towards our death?
And honestly, I'll say this: a lot of this I think started to slide when as much as everybody now is like, oh, it was ridiculous to think they were coming back in February. Okay, that's that's what you believe, that's fine. I'm telling you that from covering the team all year and being in the arena, there is a definite moment in the beginnings of March when those guys went from on track to not on track, that I think the team definitely shifted into, okay, I guess we're going to have to make it through however long this is going to take, because it was always like, if we can just make it to this point, if we can just get the guys back, then we'll be in a position. And
somebody's asking, should they just shut them down now for the certainty? I still maintain that I still think they're coming back, or at least Jamal. I think he's coming back, and I think it'll be then. Like, part of me is Malone coached this game as if it was game 82. He really did. We've seen the bench give up leads before, and Malone sticks with it, and he'll call a timeout, and he'll yell, maybe he'll change a piece here. But to bring back Yoke as quickly as he did both halves and to play like that. And by the way, this was a pretty fast-paced game. Like, I think Jokic can play 40, 41 minutes and be less tired than he was tonight. But tonight was a game that was like, it was an intense game. There was just, I don't know what it was in terms of up and down the court, but it was a lot. There was just like, it was an exhausting game to play. But I still think these guys are coming back. I think part of it was you wanted to punch your ticket. If the Nuggets won this game, they punched their ticket, and now it's easy to bring Jamal back. It's easy to rest Jokic. It's easy to do everything that you wanted to do to get ready for the playoffs. That's kind of what this loss signifies, a lost opportunity.
Yeah, it really does. I'll also say this, the question of like, why doesn't the front office shut him down? I'll say this again. Guys, that is not the era we're in. 1990, sure. 2000, sure. 2010, borderline with some pieces, yeah. The front office does not make this decision. The coaching staff does not make this decision. The training staff does not make this decision. Jamal Murray and MPJ make this decision. I am not saying that means that they are not willing to come back. They come back whenever they feel like they are ready. That is the question. With Jamal Murray in particular, when Jamal is ready to go, Jamal will play. And they are not going to pressure him, because in this environment with where the league is right now, you cannot do that. That is not where relationships with the players are.
These are the comments that kill me, though. Stefan saying, and I know he's in his feelings right now, 7 years of building around a superstar, and this is the result. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, they have 2 max contract players that are just not here. This is not the result.
$60 million. It's $60 million in salary over the next 4 years not playing for them. I'm sorry.
Emotionally decompress and like logically look at this. Now you can argue maybe they should have traded Murray when he was injured. If that's your argument, like they should have just traded Murray, been less patient. And maybe there's a case if Murray does miss this whole year, you could make that case. But to say that this is like the result of a 7-year build, come on, be honest. Like this, clearly the 7-year build includes Jamal Murray and Michael Porter.
I want to hit these two real quick. Does recurring Murray help the defense at all? And from Hurricane, who says, this team looks like something Murray and Porter can't fix. Here's what I would tell you. Here's what I tell you. Here's why I think it matters. The questions do matter, right? Because I know that you're always like, don't respond to everybody. But the reason I want to address these two is, one, defensively, guess what's going to help them a lot? They want to play a slow-paced game, and they need their set defense. They cannot handle being in mid-transition. Not just transition, mid-transition, okay? So they need made buckets in order to control the game at the pace that they want. 2, if you have 2 more guys to soak up minutes, guys are more fresh, guys are more prepared, guys have more energy, the game looks differently. Like, it just does. I'm not saying it fixes everything. Will the Nuggets defense still be bad? Yeah, it's been bad most of the years. Like, absolutely. Do they need better defensive personnel? I've been swung in that direction by various arguments. I'm there. But it does matter. Like, it factually does matter for sure. I get that it's frustrating, but like at some level, getting buckets is like great offense is a good way to help your defense. That's a great way to help your defense. And like, yeah, I also just like I mean, look, there's going to be a contingent of fans that just think that this team is nothing but Jokic and nobody else, and fully healthy. That's just not what the team projects as right now. Yeah, it looks like that. Well, I will say this: Aaron Gordon played his fucking heart out tonight. And Aaron Gordon, at the end of the game, stole a rebound from Will Barton and was trying to force his way to the basket to try and spark something. Like, Gordon was fighting. Like, Gordon was pissed in the locker room. Like, Aaron Gordon wanted this game.
Yeah,
Aaron Gordon has been there.
He's been competing hard. I mean, he's been really good, and he's been really good down the stretch here. So he's in the circle of trust along with Yoke. I mean, somebody else put in there that, you know, it looks like something Porter and Murray can't fix. I mean, I think this year that's fair. Like, I don't think Murray, I hope he comes back Thursday, but to expect him to fix the Nuggets in 2 games, regular season games, and then the playoffs, I think is short. But you know what, in terms of like what we saw of Jamal Murray, what he does in big games, what he's done in the playoffs, what he's done against the defensive player of the year and all this stuff. Like, come on, man. Like, how can anybody have watched what the Nuggets have done with Murray and not think they're a completely different team? I know it's just frustrating now because he's not available, but hopefully he is very soon.
I'm going to pass up on another comment that's irritated me. Instead, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to do, let's do hindsight theater. We'll do that when we come back. We'll take a look at what the Nuggets should have known and what they couldn't have known when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But before that, I've got to tell you about a new sponsor, Shady Rays. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' insane protection program. It includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you're going to pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusive for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season, 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. Make your second listen. Sorry, I got confused by a statement there. Make your second listen Locked On now. It's got nightly recaps of all the NBA games. Check it out wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Locked On now. Okay, so let's do some hindsight theater. Here's what I want to do. Instead of like, we could break down this game in the detail, but like, here's what it comes down to. Jokic scored a lot. Nobody else hit any shots and nobody played any defense.
Like, the defense part is the part that's disappointing because it wasn't like the Spurs had these dynamic scores. That's the part that's so frustrating, but yet they were just walking right to the paint.
Yeah, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, I'll say this too. The Spurs are like, their coaching really shines through. I've liked watching the Spurs a lot more than I thought I would this year. And they were without DeJounte Murray even. Like, the Spurs knew how to attack them because they're well coached. And the Nuggets were just like, well, that's a shame. Why don't you screw up more? And that was pretty much the ball game. But instead of that, here's what I want to ask you. Let's start here. Did the Nuggets appropriately plan for a worst case scenario, which is basically what they got with the MPJ injury?
So it's funny because I think this hindsight actually goes back to Michael Malone's decision not to play Torrey Craig over Michael Porter in his second season. I think these things are connected in that my opinion is that the front office felt like they needed to force Michael Porter onto the court and take away the security blanket. So some of this is, I think they knew the risk that they were exposed to, but they almost felt it was a necessary risk.
Interesting. Okay. I agree to a certain extent. I think the question maybe is reasonable to ask is like, was Jeff Green enough of a wing option? Because like, Jeff Green's intended role is like 15 minutes, 20 minutes in a break glass emergency. Jeff Green out again tonight with personal reasons, by the way. Not that it would have made a difference. I want to be very clear on that. Would have helped, but would not have made a difference ultimately. And like, I just wonder, like, did they need another wing? And here's what's frustrating is like, you can just go down the line and be like, well, they need another wing. Well, that was supposed to be MPJ. Yeah, but MPJ was always an injury risk. Okay, well, it's supposed to be Zeke Naji. They had real intentions for Zeke Naji to play a big role in this team, and Zeke's been out with an injury and is probably going to miss the playoffs. Like
Jeff Green going down, then on top of that, and then also you have Vlatko Čančar, all of which are options. So like, I think the amount to which the Nuggets have sort of been unlucky in a very specific way are here. The one thing I'll say, if we're playing hindsight 2020 or whatever, the thing I would say is that players like Bol and maybe even Marcus Howard, to me, those were lottery tickets, very low chance of them hitting, but a really huge upside. Like, especially talk about Marcus Howard. I mean, he's 5'8", 5'9", whatever he is. Even the idea of him is, yeah, but if he's Steph Curry, like, okay, this is great. It's like, hey, Denver for that spot doesn't need Steph Curry. Like, we've already got our Steph Curry. We've already got our guy. What you need is some guys that you need more Kenrich Williamses. You need more guys that you feel confident can fill in, and maybe they're actually high level role players. So Bol obviously represents that. Marcus Howard represents that a little bit. Maybe Zeke Naji represents the other thing. Maybe Zeke Naji projects to be like a high-level role player and that just got unlucky that he got hurt when he did.
And throughout the season, like he would have good games and then hurt his ankle, and like that was a consistent thing. Hindsight 2020, should they have been more aggressive? Well, specifically, I'll say this. Should they have specifically in the offseason?
Dozier, I forgot too. My God, they actually had a guy that PJ Dozier is actually the guy that was most
the guy.
This guy.
The guy.
Yeah.
God, should they have done
shitty luck when you think about it? I don't even think about PJ Dozier when I talk about the Nuggets' luck, but you're right. It is a sneaky important piece, just in terms of his skill set.
Specifically, let's do them separately. Should they have addressed point guard? Because the whole question we had was like, are they going to need to get a guy until Jamal Murray comes back? Should they have gotten another point guard?
I mean, I think it's safe to say that Facu was a mistake now 2 years in. Again, what does Facu represent, though? Facu represents this, like, what if he is this, like, super not a role player, but what if he's the super dynamic passer, defender, and really hits hard when it's like, hey, yeah, but he has a flaw that's really scary that might completely eliminate all of his talents. So yes, I mean, I definitely think I will say this, and George Karl, he has kind of really influenced me in this one way. The Nuggets, I think, really could just use a great point guard. I still don't think they've ever had, and I'm so curious. Like tonight, guys missing shots. All right, that's part of it. But guys, just their ability to create offense without Jokic is the part that scares me the most. If you just have another guy that creates offense for the team, I think it would help a lot.
Agree. I'm going to actually push back on this. Well, I'll push back on it, actually. I'll say no. I think the intended idea was like that Facu could get them through. And I think that was it. And I'm being serious here. I think that was a reasonable conceit. Like, for whatever criticism I have of there, did I think this would be this bad? No, I did not. Like, I did not think that. So if you go into it and you're just like, look, we're going to get, if Monte doesn't have it, maybe we play Facu more that night and finish with Facu with the starters. And you got Bones, who's wound up, like, Tim Connolly's whole thing was like, I believe in him as a playmaker. And he's been really good. I thought he wasn't great tonight, but nobody was good tonight. So, like, okay, if it's not Monte, then it's Facu. And if it's not Monte or Facu, then it's Bones. And if it's not Monte or Facu or Bones, maybe it's Austin. And instead, like, they just have these nights where it's like, well, it's not Monte and it's not Austin and it's not Bones tonight. So that's it. And your floor on none of those players is high enough. This one I do feel differently about, though. Should they have gotten a backup center? Should they have been more aggressive in free agency over the summer or throughout the regular season to address backup center?
I mean, my take on this one. This one is one that I just can't blame Tim Connolly for. I think they got the perfect backup center and he just didn't get a chance. So that's my thing. Obviously, coming into this year without one proved to be disastrous. Hindsight being 2020, I didn't think it would be as disastrous as it was. Hindsight being 2020, it easily cost them at least one game, which is all that matters at this point.
Yeah, for me, this is one where I think I should have known. And like I asked in preseason. And the idea I got, which was part of this, I will say also, is it felt like the ground shifted this year a little bit in the NBA. Like, small ball has dominated the conversations over the last 6 years. Dominated. And this year, it really has been like, you better have some size. Because there's a lot of teams that are big now. Just big. Even if they're versatile and can shoot, there's like a lot of that. Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, I don't think they could afford. Right? Like, I don't know how they make that work with the cap at all. Maybe even if they let Will go. So like that, that's one. I will go ahead and ask because it's going to be a popular one because you and I are prepared for the conversations about Will Barton. We've been talking about it. We've been talking about, hey, maybe Will Barton's expired. Then he has a big game versus the Lakers and he wasn't good tonight. Should they have been more proactive in looking at the roster and addressing the Will Barton fit conceptually? I have a hard time getting around this one, given how good they were last year with Will, but I'm willing to hear the argument for it. If you think that they should have been more aggressive.
I was in on Will Barton in the offseason, and I think he had a very strong start. He very clearly cannot hold up this level of workload for 82 games. And I think we knew that part even last year, that like he can carry a team for a month or this or that, like step into that elevated role. But eventually he sort of has hit a wall. This year he hit the wall harder than ever, sooner than ever, and sort of longer than ever. And it's just tough.
CT asks, Conley needs to address perimeter height in the offseason. Too many small guards. I agree with you, except for one small problem. Again, we return to PJ Dozier. Like, PJ Dozier is there for the entire season, and honestly, we've talked about this a lot. I like PJ Dozier better as a point guard. I liked PJ Dozier running point. He was a guy that could run pick and roll. Even if he's not a crack shooter, he could hit enough mid-range jumpers and create enough out of the pick and roll, making reads to be able to do stuff. He had great size, great length. Like, it was not one thing with the Nuggets this season. It was that they started in a hole and were like, as long as the worst case scenario doesn't happen, we're going to be okay. And then the worst case scenario happened over and over and over again. It's not one thing. It's a million things that went wrong. And I'm okay with criticizing them for how they handled that adversity, as long as we acknowledge that the deck has been stacked against them multiple times. And every time that they figured out something, it feels like another thing kind of turns against them, right? Like Cousins comes in and they're winning all these games with Cousins and it looks really great. And then like slowly over the course of it, it starts to become like, oh boy, I don't know. Right.
Yeah. I love this comment here. Will Barton. I hate to say this. It did feel like that time he did the splits was the line of demarcation. It was very early in the season, but he did that like awkward movement, and it does correlate pretty perfectly with when he started playing poorly. Who knows? Maybe, I don't know. The DeMarcus Cousins thing is tough. My take on DeMarcus Cousins is that he is a superstar who is now a bench player, and those things don't work very well unless you know, like, there's a mentality you have to have as a bench player. And he just, in Denver's two big high profile losses, the Timberwolves game and this one, Denver didn't need him to be a superstar. They needed him to give Jokic a rest, and he just wasn't able to do it tonight. And part of me thinks like it's really hard. Vince Carter is maybe the best player I've ever seen segue from superstar to, I have a limited role and I know what that is and I'll fulfill it. And DeMarcus Cousins doesn't seem like he always fully understands that. He's out there to do something spectacular. Tonight, he didn't have spectacular. But Denver would have won tonight if he just had 5 minutes for Jokic to rest.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'll say this too. There's going to be a lot of conversation about how the results from this season, regardless of the injury, has shown that the team isn't good enough and they need to make major changes. Okay. I don't know that the front office will take that approach. They are notoriously patient and reticent to overreaction. Like that's how they've gotten here, is they haven't been knee jerk. And if you've been as successful as they've been, it's kind of hard to go against that, right? Like if it's worked for you, why would you shift it? The other thing I would say is if you want a really good example of how you can dig this hole, the Lakers won the title in 2020. They came back the next season and were like, okay, we're going to swap out Dwight and JaVale, and we're going to have Marc Gasol, a categorically better player, and we're going to add these like different pieces around it. And that team, when healthy, was actually really good. But AD got hurt, and that started like a spiral, right, of things kind of going wrong. They demand, like, AD's camp basically says, you need to go get DeAndre Jordan. So they bring DeAndre Jordan in, and he starts instead of Marc Gasol, and that makes things worse, and that alienates Gasol. And then the offseason, you're like, okay, we missed the playoffs, or we made the playoffs and got the crap kicked out of us by the Suns. Even with all these injuries, we're going to reconfigure everything. So the Lakers shook up everything. They changed it, and they had all these different players. And they got worse. So my point here is you can advocate for change. You had better be sure of what you're doing in terms of making the team better, because even if it's a good idea and concept, if it works out worse, you have set this team back even further than what this season has done with all the injuries.
I mean, there's no question about it. I do think there's changes that have to be made. I mean, the thing that I look at is the perimeter defense. They just have to add some length. They have to add one or two guys that can just lock down. But those are more minor moves for sure. The question that hangs over a lot of this for me is the Michael Porter one. And sadly, I just don't know if Michael Porter is the guy that I'm just like, the Nuggets probably need at least to the trade deadline to kind of see what they have in him, if he's going to be a guy. And then on top of that, I don't know if he's tradable anyway. So he's the one piece that I look at that you thought at a max contract, you'd hope he'd have like at least one full season under his belt. And you could say, hey, is this the guy that's going to grow into what we want him to be? Or is he a good player for somebody else that we can get pieces for? But sadly, I think they're tied to him.
I'm trying to
break.
Yeah, let's do a break and we'll come back and we'll look at the Western Conference because the Nuggets got a lot of good news tonight, except for their own loss. If they just won this game, it would have been a pretty stellar night for them.
It would have been locked. It would have been a great night.
It would have been locked, but sadly not the case. So wait for another day, maybe. But let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about more about all the Western Conference. But first, let me tell you about Built Bar. It's Built Bar time. That's right. It's Built Bar time. So I went to the arena today and I didn't have time for lunch and I was starving, but luckily I had a Built Bar in my bag and I just munched down on one of the puffs, one of the churro puffs I always talk about because the churro puffs are the best. It's a marshmallow covered in 100% chocolate, infused with protein. Felt great the rest of the night. It was absolutely awesome. Most Built Bars have got only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs. That's 17 grams of protein with those. With the puffs, you can get coconut marshmallow or banana cream pie. With the regular ones, you got mint brownie and coconut almond. The new ones, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're always coming out with new flavors. Check them out at built.com. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and get 15% off your first order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making Locked On Nuggets your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. I'm on Mondays going into Tuesdays on Tuesday morning show, recapping everything that goes on in the NBA. We talked about the MVP race, which, by the way, somebody asked. No, I do not think that the Sixers getting ground. I think it helps Embiid. I think Jokic is still ahead, and if they don't wind up in the play-in, I think Nikola Jokic wins MVP. But Locked On NBA's got our local experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts, including on Fridays, which just got Adam, and who doesn't need more Adam in their lives? Okay, buddy. So the Wolves, while the Nuggets were losing to the San Antonio Spurs, a play-in team, the Timberwolves said, "Hold my beer," and lost by double.
You called this one.
Man, every year I've done the playoff race thing, and every year it's like, oh, well, they're going to go undefeated. And I learned very early to be like, nope, everybody's going to have one spot where it's just like a WTF game. And the Wolves, there we go. That's the W team I'm looking for. The Wolves lose by 20 to the Washington Wizards. So the Nuggets magic number, despite the loss, is 1. If they beat Memphis or the Lakers, who were eliminated from playoff contention tonight, Adam, have yourself a beer. The Lakers are out of the play-in. They will not be in the postseason. If the Nuggets beat one of the Grizzlies or Lakers, they are in. If the Wolves lose one of the remaining games, the Nuggets are in. The magic number is 1. On top of that, the Utah Jazz outlasted the Memphis Grizzlies in overtime after the Grizzlies, who continue to have nothing to play for and just play everyone tough. The Jazz win in overtime. This is actually, in my opinion, good news for the Nuggets because it increases the chances of the Jazz moving into the 5 spot and the Nuggets falling into the 6. The Warriors' magic number is 3, so this is going to be a real touch and go. But as of right now, there's a pretty good chance with the Warriors, I think, facing the Lakers, that this is going to wind up being the 3-seed Warriors versus the 6-seed Nuggets. And if there's a spot where there's low expectations and a good matchup, for me, if I'm the Nuggets, at this point in the season, I would rather have the Warriors than the Dallas Mavericks.
I think so too. I mean, the Mavs just defend; they keep winning in spite of everything. So I think I'm with you on that one. It could shape up good. Like honestly, this could end up working out just fine for the Nuggets. And I don't. When do the playoffs start? Do you know what day it is?
April 16th, Saturday. It is.
It's a Saturday.
Yep, it's a week from Saturday.
So this is the thing: is the Nuggets can wrap up their season on Sunday and not play till either Saturday or Sunday. That's 1 week off. Now, yes, they'll have practice and they'll be preparing for it, but to me, I look at that and I go, if you just win and get in the playoffs, this team, I honestly think a lot of their problems are that they're so tired and they have guys that are out of it. So a week off might actually prepare them. Now, that might catch up to them very quickly. I think this happened last year, by the way. I think Denver got rested, played Portland, won the series, and then just ran out of gas then, like in the second round. And maybe that happens again. But hey, my bar for a successful season is the second round. So if Denver can just lock this up, get Jamal back maybe, and then get 1 week off of rest, they still have a shot against a team like the Warriors that also are coming off of injuries.
So I'll say this. The alternative here, if you want the downside of this, here's what it looks like. If the Nuggets don't win the playoff spot, if they fall in the play-in, I was looking at the schedule this week for various things for Action Network. Let's say that they lose. They will play Wednesday. That's how it's going to work. Tuesday's going to be Eastern Conference. Wednesday's going to be Western Conference. They'll play Wednesday. If they lose to the Clippers in the 7-8 matchup, they play again on Friday and then would begin their first round series against the Phoenix Suns in that situation on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot. I mean that would be a bummer.
Yeah.
I mean they just gotta win one game. I mean part of me they could still get in even with 2 losses if Minnesota loses. I mean I feel pretty good about Denver's chances to get one, but tonight just would have been the one that made things easiest and given them the most rest. Thursday now becomes even all the more important because you get 3 days off till you play the Lakers. The Nuggets could end up giving Jokic, if they win on Thursday, they could end up giving him like 10 days off, which would be huge.
I'll go ahead and tell you, and you can call me crazy. I've been off, right? So I had that hot streak where I was predicting the games and then I fell off. I'll just tell you right now, I think they're beating the Memphis Grizzlies.
I sure hope so.
I know it doesn't make any sense. I understand that. Fully understand how crazy that seems given the Nuggets record versus teams over 500 and the fact that Memphis just finds ways. I think that the Denver Nuggets beat Memphis on Thursday and they wind up clinching the game on Thursday. I understand
that's good positivity to send us out on, Matt. I like it. You have been on fire with some of these calls. You called a lot of these ones. So a win on Thursday. All right. I needed that shot in the arm of positivity.
Okay. No Jamal Murray, no updates on any of those guys, no updates whatsoever. So we'll see.
I think we get one tomorrow.
We'll see what happens. At this point, I'm not going to make any proclamations because I can't ever figure out anything. It's a
prediction for me to make. That's why I'm making it, just to look like.
Why not? Why not? Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great night. Thanks for joining us on a late night edition of Locked On Nuggets. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. We'll preview the Memphis game. We'll go over all sorts of things related to the Western Conference and how it stands. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.